The youth want to talk to the trusted adults in their lives about the issues that they're facing and about their concerns. I realized this when I was teaching the 15-year-old Sunday school class several years ago. I had a great class of kids. They were very respectful, and they participated when I asked them questions and when I would call on them to read the scriptures. But I had a hard time getting them engaged and excited about the lesson. There was one lesson that I gave that the youth were very excited about, and they had a great discussion, so much so that they didn't want to leave class when it was time to go. Ironically, this lesson was on the law of chastity. The lesson started out basically the way all of these lessons start, with the kids staring at the floor and awkwardly shuffling their feet, while I told them about the law of chastity, what it was, why they should follow it, and it was basically a lecture. But then I switched the mode of the lesson to a discussion. The youth have been taught since they were really little about the law of chastity and what they shouldn't do, and they all know this. The thing that they want to know is what is okay and what is appropriate and where that line is. And so when I asked them this question and turned it over to them and told them to come up with the answers, because I couldn't give them the answers for that, they had a great discussion and they came up with really good guidelines, and they would be more likely to follow those because they are guidelines that they came up with and discussed and understood. There are many issues that are facing our youth today that are very challenging, confusing, and difficult, and they would like to talk to the trusted adults in their life about these issues. One of these issues is, what is the big deal about pornography? The big deal about pornography is the damaging effects of pornography. Pornography damages the brain, it damages the family, and it damages society. The way that pornography damages the brain is that it's very much like hard drugs like meth and cocaine. The same chemical reactions occur in the brain when viewing pornography as when using these drugs. The difference is that in viewing pornography, the chemical reaction in the brain is much more powerful than when doing drugs. It's like a chemical bomb goes off in the brain when they're viewing pornography. And excessive amounts of dopamine are released into the brain. In teens' brains, it has been shown that the reward pathways are 2 to 4 times more powerful than in adult brains, which means in a teen's brain, when they're viewing pornography, they have much higher levels of dopamine released into their brain. And just as with meth and cocaine, viewing pornography is addicting. The way that this works is that in the brain, when your brain is flooded with so much dopamine, that is not a normal state. And so the brain tries to react to that and normalize those levels by shrinking the dopamine receptors. And as these dopamine receptors are shrunk, there are fewer dopamine receptors that are releasing dopamine into the brain of the individual. And so it takes more dopamine releases to help the individual to even feel normal. And so the individual begins to crave more and more pornography. Elder Dallin H. Oaks said, "It impairs decision-making capacities and it hooks its users, drawing them back obsessively for more and more. A man who had been addicted to pornography and to hard drugs wrote me this comparison. In my eyes, cocaine doesn't hold a candle to this. I have done both. Quitting even the hardest drugs was nothing compared to trying to quit pornography." And pornography physically changes the brain. As the neural pathways of the brain are fired in making different connections, it creates new pathway connections. Basically, in layman's terms, on fightthenewdrug.org website, it said, neurons that fire together wire together. And so the brain is physically changed by these firing and rewiring of the brain. And studies also showed that in the brain of addicts, the frontal lobes shrink. Pornography is damaging to the family. Viewing pornography leads to objectifying of women. It also promotes violence towards women. And when women view pornography, they think that these abusive and violent acts are normal and even healthy. Pornography results in a loss of the spirit. Dallin H. Oaks said, "When we worthily partake of the sacrament, we are promised that we will have his spirit to be with us. To qualify for that promise, we covenant that we will always remember him. Those who seek out and use pornography for sexual stimulation obviously violate that covenant. They also violate a sacred covenant to refrain from unholy and impure practices. They cannot have the Spirit of the Lord to be with them." I know personally of the damaging effects on the family from the use of pornography. My sister married a sharp returned missionary in the temple. They had 4 beautiful daughters, and they were the cutest little family. Her husband was the best dad, and everything with him was awesome, and everything was an adventure. They would go to the store together, and it was an adventure. Everything was just so fun for their family, and they were just had the greatest time together. But then he started viewing pornography, and this changed his personality. It totally changed the person that he was. And he began to be very abusive of my sister, to the point that finally, after several years, she left him and divorced him. After she had left the home, her 2 older daughters told her that their dad had been sexually abusing them and that he had threatened to kill their mother if they told. All of these girls are now grown. It's been 12 years. He has not had any contact with them since they left the home, but each of those girls still has emotional and health issues because of the abuse that took place in the home because of his pornography addiction. Viewing pornography damages society. It leads to objectifying women and violence towards women. Darn. Stop right